Good morning, friends. Today we will discuss a rather sensitive subject for which Hindu society is quite often criticized. So that subject is the idea of caste. C-A-S-T, caste is an idea, is something which is there as we see in the Indian society, and for that there is a lot of criticism. Genuinely and deservingly there is a lot of criticism. So we have to examine how this idea, how this system or how this institution called caste has come into existence, how it has evolved over a period of time, what do our scriptures actually say, what do the books say, and how it has transformed. So all this we have to see. So I will tell about one very ancient source, that is from the Vedas. There is a book called Brihadaranyaka Upanishad from the Shukla Yajurveda. There is a very famous Upanishad called, very famous and the largest Upanishad called Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. That Upanishad gives an account of how this sort of stratification, how this has come into existence. So it says, in the beginning there was only one Varna. Varna means one category. Varna is a particular category. And then all people were one and the same. All people were equal. At that time, you call them Brahmin, you call them Vishnu, you call them Vaishya, you call them Kshatriya, all were one and the same. But then, there was no division of work in society. So that was not adequate to run the society. That particular system where everyone was equal in those primitive days, in those pre-agriculture days, let us say, pre-agriculture times rather. So at that time, then there was a need for somebody who had to protect the society. So from this one single Varna, another Varna came into existence that was called Kshatriya. That is for the protection of the society. So it says, it was not able to fulfill the needs of the society, and so it created Kshatriya, the warrior king. So says the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad in the very first volume. So then even that was not adequate, because there was, on one hand, there is what is called a Brahmin who was in charge of these rituals, who was doing all these Vedic karmas and things like that. And then there was one particular class which was Kshatriya. But then there is also a need to generate wealth in the society. They have to do some trade. So there is a neighboring tribe or neighboring society. So with that neighboring society, there should be some sort of give and take. So there is so much of material has to be produced. So this sort of need, it created another class called Vaishya. Vaishya, all types of trade. In those days, it included agriculture also, because agriculture was, even today of course in India, countries like India, agriculture is one of the main components for our GDP, that gross domestic product. Agriculture is a very important component. So in those days, agriculture was invariably a great, main source of revenue rather. And then Krushi Goraksha Vanijyam. Goraksha is cattle. Cattle wealth was one of the most important aspects of wealth. Then trade. So these three categories, that is practically including every aspect, every group which was generating some wealth. That is a farmer who is producing something, a cattle herd who is taking care of the cattle and multiplying the cattle and then selling and then making money out of it, and then some other trader who may be trading in pulses, he may be trading in clothes, he may be trading in some other material, gold, silver or anything. So all these things that evolved over a period of time. So then when that was also, even that was not sufficient, there was a need for somebody who has to do various manual, odd jobs. Even today, of course, we have in society, in every society, practically every society, you will have people who are thinkers, maybe some professors and people of that type. There are people who are there in the borders protecting us. They are our soldiers. And then within the country, there are our policemen. So these are somewhat comparable to the Kshatriyas. That is because these are the people who are protecting the society. And then the trading community, that is most important today. In fact, economics dictate politics. So economics, the people who are engaged in economics, they are the people who are, the largest number of people. And then there are some workers, So somebody who prepares some tea in your office, or somebody who say sweeps your office, because in any office there should be some mechanism, somebody who is a caretaker, somebody who is what is called some sort of handyman. In other countries, in US, they call him a handyman, somebody who comes and then if your say air conditioning is not working, this man goes and then he rectifies it. If there is some problem with the plumbing say system, so this man goes and rectifies. So even today, or in any society, whether it is today or future, there is a need for somebody who has to do the manual work. There is a need for somebody who has to come and mow the lawn. So all these things are there, done by several people who have not, who are not educated, who don't have the adequate education, and who are not otherwise employable. So such people, they take up these things. So in any society, whether it is primitive or modern, there are these types of people. There is a group called thinkers, policy makers. You call them thinkers and policy makers. You call the other group the protectors of the society, protector at the border and protection within the society. And then the people who are generating wealth, and then those who are in charge of various odd services. So in any society, whether it is past, present or future, this categorization is bound to be there. So that is what this Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says in the very first volume, 1-4- say 10, 11, 12 and 13. So these are the mantra numbers. So this is one description that is the ancient, the oldest source, let us say, the oldest source about the origin of Varna. Then there is another source, that is Rigveda. Rigveda, in the 10th mandala, there is a very famous mantra. When you go to a temple also, you listen to the Purusha Sukta. Purusha Sukta. Purusha means the cosmic being. You see, in Indian system, I have been telling that the human being is not considered as some independent creation. Human being is part and parcel of the whole, organic whole. He is part and parcel of the macrocosm. This individual is a microcosm which is not different from the macrocosm. In fact, it is a miniature of the macrocosm. So that is the view of the Indians. And then not only human being, but every animal, every living animal, every being is something which is part and parcel of this whole universe. So this is what is called that universal mind. If you take it, universal mind or a cosmic being, if you visualize, it is called Purusha. So there is a sukta, there is a sort of hymn. Hymn is H-Y-M-N, hymn, a sort of praise, a eulogy for this Purusha in this say Rigveda. So there is a shloka, there is a mantra which says Brahmanosya mukhamasit, Brahmanosya mukhamasit, Bahurajanyah kurtaha. You must have heard about it. It is such a ubiquitous mantra. You go to any temple, you do puja, and then he recites that whole Purusha Sukta. So there is a description of that cosmic being, and then how the man is integrally connected with everything else in the say universe. So that is intended to give you a Sarvatma Bhava. That is intended to give you a notion that I am part and parcel of this large large nature. And then I have to contribute, I have to play my role in this nature. I am not somebody who is some independently created as the boss of the nature. So it is the intention of that is that. And there this line particularly says, Brahmanosya mukhamasit. For this Virat Purusha, for this cosmic being, the Brahmin became Asit. If you observe the language there, Brahmanaha Asya Mukham Asit. Asit means he became. Brahmana became the mukha. Mukha means, mukha in Sanskrit it means two things. That is, one is face and the other is mouth. So Brahmin was the mouthpiece. He was the face. He was like the head. He was the mouthpiece for the whole society. So that is the thing. He was the spokesman, let us say in modern language is spokesperson or a mouthpiece for the society. And Bahu Rajanyah Krutaha. The shoulders, the king or a Kshatriya or the warrior class, they became the shoulders. And then Uru Tad Asya Yad Vaishyaha. The Uru, the thigh portion, because this is what totally supports the whole structure. It supports the trunk, it supports the hands, head, every other thing. So that is why the support structure is economy. In any society, the support structure is economy. So this Vaishya, the person who generates wealth, The wealth in those days by three means: Krushi, that is agriculture; Goraksha, cattle rearing; and then Vanijyam, various types of trade. So these three things, that is, they constituted the Thai portion. Then the last sentence says, Padbhyam Shudro Ajayata. By virtue of this feat, he became, by virtue of it means two things. Padbhyam Shudro Ajayata, there Ajayata, Padbhyam Ajayata, the grammatical construction, it means two things. One way is to say that from the feet Shudra came, or by virtue of the feet he became Shudra. By virtue of the feet, Shudraha Ajayata. He was called Shudra. He became, in the sense, he was called Shudra. By virtue of face, he was called Brahmin. And by shoulders, he was called, the Kshatriya became the shoulders. The Vaishya became the thighs. And then, by virtue of the feet, that Virat Purusha is called Shudra. So, this whole structure is organically related. So this is one description which we find in this source. So these two are the oldest sources. And a much later source is Mahabharata. These Vedas, of course, they are at least some 5,000 to 6,000 years old. So Mahabharata, it is said to be, that also, traditionalists, they say it is about 5,000 years old. Moderns, they say it is around 3,000 years old. Whatever it is later to Vedas. It is subsequent to Vedas. Vedas came first and then later this Mahabharata has come. So in the Mahabharata we know that Gita, Bhagavad Gita is a part of Mahabharata. And then Lord Krishna says in a very, very famous line, Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam gunakarma vibhagashaha tasya kartaram apimam vidhya kartaram avyayam. Okay, we need not bother about this shloka. Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam. This whole structure called four varnas, it has been created by me. How? Guna karma vibhagashaha. Depending on their innate qualities. Depending on their innate qualities and then the functions which are allotted to them. So this is what is the most important thing. Krishna is not saying by jati karma vibhagashaha, by virtue of their birth he is not saying. He says by virtue of the traits, by virtue of the personality traits, by virtue of the characteristics with which they are endowed. By virtue of, by that, the person is decided whether he is a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya or a Shudra. So that is what Krishna says. So I have used four words here which are new to you, that is Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. These four words, these four are not caste. They are called Varna. This is an important point which we have to see. This is Varna and not caste. Chatur Varnyam means the four Varnas are not castes. So anyway, about caste, how it has come out, I will tell you. You can now come to the first slide. That slide, Varna and caste 1. So I was telling you, Upanishads talk of one Varna in the beginning, I explained to you. And say different Varnas, of course, they evolved depending on because of the social needs. And then the Upanishads, they also talk about three aspects in nature. So that is Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. These three words I have told in this series also, Hinduism course, say 25th say and 26th slide. Maybe it is there in the fifth session or sixth session. You can just go back. There I have discussed these three aspects in the nature or in the Prakriti. Nature is, again, we may mistake it for all the trees, say hills, lakes, etc. we are finding. But nature does not mean that. Let me say Prakriti. Prakriti is the manifesting, the creative power which manifests in that Supreme Brahman. We know that Supreme Brahma, that the ultimate reality, that the Supreme reality is nothing but existence and consciousness. In that, there is an expressive power, there is a creative power which we have called Maya. It is otherwise called Prakriti. It is called Prakriti because it appears as many. Prakashena Karoti. It appears as so many. So that is why it is called Prakriti. And that Prakriti, in English we cannot loosely call it nature, because if we call nature we may misunderstand it with the trees and hills around us. But it is much, much more than that. It includes the whole cosmic being. It includes the whole cosmos. So that is what is Prakriti. So in that Prakriti there are three aspects, that is Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. So what the Upanishads and also the Gita say is that everything in the universe is a product of these three aspects, sattva, rajas and tamas. So what are these sattva and rajas and tamas? These three things mixing in different proportions, they make the whole variety which we see in the world. Otherwise, if it were to be only sattva, all people will be good people, all the people will be law-abiding, all the people will be highly contented people, all the people are doing some pujas, etc., all the people are, virtuous. So that is what we will see. If only rajas were to be there, everybody would be fighting with everyone else. If tamas were to be there, all people would be dullards, all people would be just absolutely lacking in initiative, etc. So that is what is tamas. So these three aspects in the nature, the three aspects in the Prakriti, mixing in different proportions, they go to the making of the diversity which we see in nature. So again, if you see the slide, scriptures call this varna. They call this varna based on the traits with which a person is born. So then you come to the next slide. The Gita describes these things. And then Gita, say Shankaracharya, that is Bhashya, not only Shankaracharya, all the commentators, and also Krishna himself says that predominance of sattva, this sattva, what is the meaning of sattva? So it produces these qualities, that is passion for knowledge, that is a person, he is always, he is a seeker, he is an explorer, he has a passion for knowledge, and he is also truthful, compassion, contentment, all these virtues are the product of the sattva. So the person who has these qualities, he is called Brahmin. Not by virtue of birth, by virtue of these qualities, a person is called Brahmin. And then a predominance of rajas. The next quality is, the next aspect or quality is rajas. This produces aggression. This produces aggression and dominating tendency. This aggression can be two types. That is, one is physical aggression. I want to capture your land. I want to invade on some other country. I want to impose my rule there. So that is a physical aggression. There is an economic type of aggression where you are not actually grabbing or anything like that, but you are imposing you are practicing all methods to accumulate wealth. You gather more and more wealth. You have got an acquisitive tendency. So these two tendencies are found in rajas. So if this spirit of dominance, if the spirit of aggression is more, he is called a Kshatriya. And then you come to the third slide. If the spirit of acquisitiveness, greed, pursuit of wealth, those things, if they are there, that person is called a Vaishya. That person is called a Vaishya. That is all types of the trading community. The farmers, that is agriculturists, and the people who have these cattle farms, and then who are engaged in different types of trade. All these people are called Vaishya. And then predominance of tamas. A person who lacks in initiative, person who is dull. So these are the qualities which are characteristic of this tamas. And then a person who is endowed with these things, he is called tamasika, or he is called a shudra. So this is the general classification. And not only among human beings, this mixture is there among all animals. This mixture is there among all animals. You see some animals which are very bovine, which are very quiet, some animals quite aggressive, carnivorous. So like that, you find all types of animals. So similarly, you find in everything we find in the universe, even the food we eat. In Bhagavad Gita, it talks about the Sattvika food, the Rajasa food and Tamasa food. There are certain types of foods which make your mind active, which will not dull your brain. It will give you some sort of coolness. They will go to the making of the body. They will properly get digested and they will help in making the body. So that is the type of Sattvika food. Rajasa food, it makes you rather aggressive, so angry. Then Tamasa food also we know, some alcoholic drinks etc., which dulls the brain. So this is the type of Tamasa food. So all in the nature, all the things which we see, they also have these qualities. So everything in the nature is a mixture of these three aspects called sattva, rajas and tamas. So this is what we have to see. Now of course we are talking about human beings in the society. We are not talking about sattvika food and rajasa food, we are talking about the human beings. Then let us come to the next slide. Then we come to this Mahabharata. Mahabharata is, we know that it is a huge epic. It is about 3 to 4 times as big as the complete works of Shakespeare. It is like that. So that book, it has got so many episodes. It has got so many episodes and then plots and subplots and things like that. And then there are so many passages where there is, say, teaching on administrative matters, teaching on philosophical issues, teaching on morals, various things. So there are various social issues, etc. So there are several passages where this issue of Varna was discussed. So which means that even 3000 years ago, this Varna, this subject called Varna was a sort of contentious issue. That is something which was debated. In the sense that, say, a person, a rishi, a saint, suppose a sage, a saint is there. And then he has got a son. This son is not having the same qualities, suppose. The son is not having, he is not having all those, say, qualities like compassion, contentment, virtuousness and pursuit for knowledge. All these qualities are not there. He is pursuing some other line. So how can he be called a Brahmin? So that was the basic question. Maybe in those days, the basic idea of what is Varna, it was being, say, a person, if you are calling him a Brahmin, he has to have these qualities. So that was the idea in those days. So when a person was not up to those standards, he was not called a Brahmin. He was called a Shudra, he was called a Vaishya. Whatever qualities he was having, he was described in such manner. So that is what repeatedly is told in Mahabharata. There are several passages where sage Vyasa clarifies that it is according to the qualities that a person has to be categorized and it is not according to birth. So many times he says. So which means that at that time, in those days, there was a sort of, say, upward and downward movement from these Varnas. Somebody who was born a Shudra by virtue of, say, his good, character, he was elevated to the level of a Brahmin. That is, we have got examples. For example, sage Vyasa himself he was born to a fisherwoman. And then he, of course, the father was a rishi, but the mother was a fisherwoman. Valmiki was a tribal, was basically a tribal, a hunter. So this gentleman, he got some sort of, say, teaching from sage Narada, and then he became a saint. And then he is now worshipped, say, like a rishi. So like that, we come across, there are so many instances. Rama is a Kshatriya, whom we worship. Krishna, if we use modern, say standards, we have to call him a BC, backward class, because he was a Yadava. Yadava means a cowherd. So cowherd, nowadays we call it a backward class, but in those days it was called a Dvija, a Vaishya, because a cattle herd also was a Vaishya, because he was in charge of, say, economic, say, production of economy. So then Krishna, again, though he was from Vaishya category, he is also worshipped even now. So we have got several instances where this sort of upward and downward movement we can see. Then it shows that Varna was a debated issue even then, and Mahabharata clarifies that Varna has to be decided by qualities and characteristics and not by birth. So this is what we have to see. Then we have to know, we come to the next slide called Dvija. Dvija, Dvi means Dve, two. Ja means born. Dvija means twice born. What is this twice born? Everybody is born once, but after he undergoes a ritual called Upanayanam. Upanayanam is the sacred thread is put on his shoulder, and then say from that day onwards he has to perform certain rituals. He has to compulsorily perform certain rituals. So the first three Varnas, they were called the Dvijas. The first three Varnas were, that is the Brahmin, who was in charge of all this learning and say maintenance of, performance of rituals and then counseling the king and things like that. Brahmins, of course, they were never kings. They voluntarily courted poverty. If we see the whole history of Brahmins, they voluntarily courted poverty. And then all these people, most of the people, all these sages, they lived in the forest. So Brahmin was one. Then Vaishya, Kshatriya. Kshatriya was also, he was also called a Dvija. He also underwent this ritual called Upanayanam. Then the other category, that is Vaishya, the person in charge of trade and say commerce. So this gentleman, he also underwent all this because he is also an important component in society. So these three categories, they were called Dvija. So Dvija, quite often we mistake it for Brahmin only. We mistake it that it refers only to Brahmins. It is not so. Dvija refers to all these three Varnas. So this is what we have to see. Then all these people, they were entitled to study scriptures. All the people were entitled to study Veda. By scripture we mean only Veda. By scripture we mean only Veda. Whereas all the secondary scriptures like Mahabharata, Ramayana and other Smritis, they were for everyone. Except Veda, which was supposed to be revealed by say the creator, all other things, all these books like Ramayana, Mahabharata and all these things, they were say read by all the communities. In fact, if you see Ramayana, the very first chapter of Ramayana, there is a last shloka. The very first chapter in Ramayana, it has got about 100 verses. The last verse says, Patan Dvijo Vagrushabhatvam Syat Kshatriyo Bhumipatitvam. It refers to all the four Varnas. It says that all the four Varnas, they will get eminence in their own field. A Brahmin will get eminence in his own field. Kshatriya will become eminent in his own field. A Vaishya will become a greater Vaishya. A Shudra will become a more noble, praiseworthy Shudra. Janascha Shudropi Mahatvam. Mahatvam means greatness. He attains greatness. Even a Shudra who is well read in Mahabharata and Ramayana, they are accepted. They are accepted as great scholars. So that was there even in the Ramayana time. So which means, except the basic texts like Vedas, all other things, they were permitted for all the people. But then of course, over a period of time, these Vedas, they were also relaxed. That of course, that happened in the 19th century when by the time the British had come, and by the time they started trying to find out what are the say fault lines in the Hindu society and how to develop some cleavage, how to develop division in the society. So they started analyzing all these things. They started interpreting our say mythological stories also. They started giving racial interpretation. Instead of giving, mythology is actually a projection of philosophy in the form of a story. Instead of seeing the philosophy, they started say explaining it from a sort of anthropological point of view, not from a theologian's point of view. They started explaining from an anthropologist's point of view. So this is what we see say after the British came. And at that time, we see some social movements within India. For example, Swami Dayananda. Swami Dayananda himself was a Brahmin. He started a movement called Arya Samaja. He was a very great scholar in Vedas, and then he started telling Vedas to everyone. He taught Vedas to everyone, practically everyone. So similarly, other people who came, for example, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and then his school, that is Swami Vivekananda and all those people. Then again Swami Chinmaya and various other modern teachers. All the modern teachers, they teach Vedas to everyone. But the funny thing is, nobody is studying. We are only accusing that Brahmins have kept all this as their own preserve. Brahmins are not teaching. But right from 19th century, these are being taught to everyone. But unfortunately, nobody is learning. So this is the picture. So anyway, we will continue this in the next session. Thank you.